This is 11:48 a.m. and we are doing Hercules and Antaeus, the mock IOC which I spent 2 minutes looking at instead of 20 minutes because I am getting lazy and I feel that this is not helping me, but perhaps it will help you. And I feel like even without this 20 minutes you can still um make up enough crap to fill up your 8 minutes and get a 7. So if you, we're going to see how it goes because I did not annotate the poem. I just wrote down my thesis and I'm just going to read my thesis, make up arguments as we go along. And I didn't even read the poem. Well, I read it yesterday, but yeah, great idea, right? So 8 minutes starting now. Hercules and Antaeus is a follow-up poem to Antaeus written by Seamus Heaney. And in fact, the poem begins with a line from the second last stanza of Antaeus. This describes the actual battle between Hercules and Antaeus, part of the Greek myth of Hercules traveling to go and get his to retrieve the 12 labors. And in this specific example, Hercules and Antaeus continues the allegory that Heaney began in Antaeus, describing the conflict between Britain and Ireland and how there ultimately is no victor in this battle. How, in the act of the violence, the reward is not found. And so we will be proceeding to my first argument, which centers around the idea of how Hercules is not one of these characters with any conscience for the idea of Antaeus, which is Ireland. How, although the two are connected by perhaps this physical, they have physical distance being close to each other, they do not consider the entirety of the situation when they fight. Why are they fighting? Perhaps to get the 12 labors, the reward. The ends is the consideration, but not the means. And this can be analyzed in the use of punctuation in the first two lines of the poem. These frequent hyphenated terms to give glory to Hercules, to describe his labors, to describe the power of Britain, and perhaps how they are disillusioned, how his mind is big with golden apples and his future is hung with trophies. This alliteration in line 4 of his future hung. It really, the trophy is not in defeating Ireland itself, but the poem is about defeating Ireland. So what's the purpose of the poem? And this idea continues in the use of structure in the second stanza, having the enjambment between stanzas 2 and 3, including Antaeus in the second stanza, really connects Hercules and Antaeus. So when the line says Hercules has the measure, it also means that they have less distance between each other, and perhaps that they're closer to each other than they think. And the metaphor of how the fall was a renewal and how Antaeus is weaned continues this feminine imagery of Mother Earth and the language that was used line word for word in the previous poem, Antaeus. However, this time it is not describing the thoughts of Antaeus approaching the battle. Rather, it is the description of the battle itself. And the use of the M dash at the end of near the end of the third stanza is signifies tone shift, and how now that they set up Hercules, the power of Hercules, the fact that the challenger's intelligence is a spur of light, this metaphor of light presenting this jovial rejuvenation and this ecstasy, this passion that comes from the fight. And the blue prong, graping, Antaeus, supports this idea of how Antaeus and both Antaeus and Hercules believe that they have the power of the gods. And the blue prong is an allusion to Poseidon's trident. And this leads me to my second point, which is that the fact that Hercules wins the battle, there's really in the shift in tone in line 7, in the mood. Winning the battle takes place in stanza 7. However, there is no conclusion. It's as if a book was ending in the climax. The fact that the devices used near the end of the poem, the simile for a profiled ridge, is really the identifies how, again, this idea, the remorseless V and the profiled ridge representing the feminine, but perhaps the loss of the feminine, how Hercules has taken it from Antaeus. What has Hercules taken? And how Ireland, now that it's lost its resources, it's lost its culture to Britain, it is only a sleeping giant, sleeping representing death, obviously, and then pap for the dispossessed. The specific use of diction here, pap is referring to baby food. So perhaps Antaeus and Ireland, this idea that they are the major losers. However, what does Britain gain from the battle? Because Britain could have gained so much from Ireland in the middle of the poem, 4th, 5th, and 6th stanzas, summarizing the loss of the feminine, the loss of the power of Antaeus being lifted up, how the secret gullies of his strength, how all of this was deep down in the past, how there was such a rich history. The idea of, especially the alliteration in stanza 6 about Balor will die and Berthnoth and Sitting Bull. This idea referring back to the Irish culture. Balor and Berthnoth were both killed in their biggest mistakes. Sitting Bull was a Native American. How all three of these were subjugated by larger powers, and how they all made a fatal error, and how it's almost fate. How this has bequeathed it to elegists. How even before Antaeus died, the elegists were talking about him. Elegist is referring to the idea of elegy is a poem written in commemoration of the dead. So the fact that fate playing a role in the overarching theme of the poem, that no matter what, even though there's no point of fighting if you know you are going to lose. And that is what happens to Antaeus, because he realizes that this use of punctuation here in the entire poem, having this idea of the consistent tone changes, that ultimately, as a whole, Britain has not gained anything. That the river veins, the strength, the hatching grounds that made Antaeus so great, the defeat in itself, what has Hercules gained? He only has gained passage to go to somewhere else. And Ireland is just left as a husk. 8 minutes are up, guys. So, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? I did not talk about devices at all. I just talked about... I just discussed my interpretation of the poem without delving deeper into the reasons why. And that is a fatal error. What is the point of this course? Literature HL. We are analyzing the poems and what do poems consist of? Structure, tone, mood, devices, sound devices, literary devices. That is the most important thing you need to talk about. You need to connect it to your overarching theme. I tried to search for things to talk about. Near the end, I was like, oh, punctuation. That's what you should do, guys. Just mention things, and the teacher, and make sure you're pleasing your teacher, whoever she is or he is. So, Hercules and Antaeus, what do you think, guys? I would say 15 out of 20. Remember, guys, as long as you're good at articulating your thoughts, no matter how little you prepare, you can still get a 6. Okay, guys, this is my advice to you. Thank you, guys. Please like and subscribe. Please comment below